license, I am totally free. I am always joyful in God's harmony.
It is my pleasure to introduce Reverend Judy Beach. I would like to give you a little bit of background on her. She said, well, you don't have to read all that. It says, you wrote it out here. It says it's important, and I think we all need to know who you are. So this is Reverend Judy. Reverend Judy Beach is an ordained Unity minister. After graduating from Unity Institute and Seminary with a Master of Divinity degree in June 2016, she served as a senior minister in Corpus Christi, Texas. Reverend Judy is served as a licensed Unity teacher here in Unity of New Braunfels. She is a certified Q coach, a healthy congregation coach, and served as a Unity Worldwide Ministries ministry wellness consultant. Reverend Judy has spoken at numerous Unity communities. Prior to entering ministry, she consulted and facilitated various corporations in change management and leadership development. She is a native Texan. Her mission is to grow and inspire herself and others to live a life of joy, freedom, and excellence. And with that, would you please give Reverend Judy Beach a wonderful Unity of New Braunfels welcome.
It's kind of like coming home a bit because I started here in this church in 2005. So I became a licensed Unity teacher here. And one of my first volunteer jobs was the Unitots. And so you see people like Christopher, he used to be a Unitot. So it's been a while. It's always been a special place in my heart, this church. And so thank you for having me back or here. And I want to tell you a little bit about not just my journey, but our journey. So as Steve mentioned, I went to seminary, and I had the great privilege and honor of living at Unity Village for 3 years to attend seminary. It was a great experience to live on those sacred grounds and interact with my classmates and have faculty like some of the names you've heard before, like Reverend Robert Brummett and Reverend Dr. Paul Hasselbeck. And I missed my home, which was still here with my husband, Steve. So some of you know Steve Beach. He stood behind me and with me for all these years. And he's here, of course, today. He's my driver. So I missed home, and I would talk on the phone with Steve at least twice a day. I'd come home to visit when I could. I thought how nice it would be to be home, hug my puppy, have my own kitchen, have dinner, etc. And when I finally got to come home, not finally, that sounds like something else, but Marty, is there something I need to do with this microphone? Bring it down. Excuse us while we have a little technical work there. When I did move home, in preparation of that, I packed up all of my books. You won't believe all the books you gather 3 years in seminary. My clothes, they were all winter clothes because it's cold up there. And myself, I had great ideas about how perfect it would be to be home, get my study all set up with the things I brought. And I wasn't seeing the house the same way. You ever have that happen? It was interesting. And I started noticing there were some things that didn't serve me well. For instance, Let's see if I can move this. You wonder maybe where this talk came from. Teabags. My tea bags were on the opposite side of the kitchen from the water and the teapot. Who would do such a thing? Didn't serve me well. I started seeing a lot of things. Didn't serve me well. I started getting some anxiety because, not only do I need to move the tea bags, but I've got these books to set up. I've got these messages to put together. I have emails to write. I have meals. Now I have meals to cook. And when am I going to sleep? I'm too busy. I got caught up in this busyness wave. Have you ever done that? Yeah. So it's almost an epidemic, isn't it? We get caught up in our doingness. We get stopped at a light. We check our phones. We ask somebody, how you doing? I'm busy. And it goes from I'm busy to I'm crazy busy. And it's almost like a badge of honor that we have. I'm busy. I'm important. And what's our usual response? Oh, me too. Oh, honey, and it's sympathetic. It's reassuring. It's also depressing. Jackie Woodsize calls this busy the new rich. People call and ask, are you busy? Well, of course I am. I'm important. I've got to be busy. But it can also be like an addiction, that we get caught up in this. And we begin to fill every single moment with something to do or something we should be doing, like moving the tea bags. We tackle our to-do list like it's a monster that we have to get control of. There's a documentary that was done by Cassidy Hall called Pursuit of Silence. And he said, quote, we're consumed by our phones, computers, television, technology, work, busyness itself. So much so that there's nothing left of us for the solitude, space, and silence for which we were designed. Our days are so marked by modern days, life's measurements like likes, comments, measurements that are outside of us. Yeah. So our society even tells us only a busy life is successful and productive. While research tells us something else. What happened to us? What happened? Did we buy into that story about idleness is the devil's workshop? Anybody heard of that one? How about the ant and the grasshopper? Yep. So here I am standing in my kitchen with the tea bags on the other side of the kitchen, and I was feeling this sense of lack, this anxiety, this sense of I'm not enough, I'm not organized enough, I don't have enough time, I don't have enough energy. And then I remembered a story from the Bible. The story of Martha, Mary, and Jesus in Luke 10:38 through 42. And some of you may remember this story. I'm going to read it quickly. Now, as they went on their way, he, meaning Jesus, entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. So she came to him and asked, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Nobody else has said that, right? Tell her then to help me. But the Lord answered, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is only need of one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. Martha's a busy woman. Not only is she providing hospitality to Jesus, but also he probably brought at least 12 of his friends. Jesus is a token of love, but this is a dangerous situation because he's near Jerusalem, if you remember the context of this story, and has already been challenged by authorities. So we take this story and not look at it from the characters of Martha and Mary. I had someone come up to me this morning and say, please help me understand Martha. How could I be empathetic with Martha? This is a woman who's so busy all the time. Anyway, we got through that. So looking at it not as characters like one's doing the right thing and the other one's doing the wrong thing, but look at it from a metaphysical perspective. So in Charles Fillmore's Metaphysical Bible Dictionary, Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, wrote, Martha represents the outer activity of the soul and is receiving the higher self. And Mary represents the inner or soul receptivity. So Martha is showing her love by service. Mary is showing hers by learning at Jesus' feet. Both of these are necessary for spiritual growth. Both are. There's no animosity in this story at all. But we should take heed that in our desire to serve, we do not forget our times of communion with the indwelling God. We should not set our values higher on service than on the quiet, loving receptivity of spirit, of truth that's within us. Jesus' feet metaphysically represents the soul as learning the lessons of life from the higher self. So you can get that. The feet connect with the earthly concerns and from a heavenly perspective, a higher perspective. So when these lessons are learned, are given first place in consciousness, the activity of service that follows becomes simple and easy. But Martha, her serving quality is given precedence. And then there's this anxiety and irritation because there's a seeming separation from the source of love and peace and joy. Make sense? So, both of the sisters are good and useful aspects. They're both friends of Jesus, the spiritual teacher. They're both serving spiritual consciousness. So Martha, demanding her duties to be given first place, has the spiritual teacher, our way shower, Jesus, point out that Mary, the inner activity, is to be given attention so that we can be receptive to the lessons from the higher self. And that part of Martha, Martha, that's Jesus expressing a deep concern for her. It's not like, Martha, Martha. It's Martha, Martha. You are worried and distracted by many things. I was curious about, because I'm kind of a Bible geek, I was curious about the Greek words here because the Bible, the Christian scriptures were written in Greek originally. And then now we read it in English, but and sometimes people do more things with it. But actually, the Greek word here for distracted is perseizo. perseispao, which means, you don't have to remember that. It means to draw away. Or here's a more interesting aspect of it, or drag around. You ever felt dragged around by your doing this? Martha's being drawn away from the present with her outer activity. And even though that word sounds a little bit benign, like distracted, it's really more active and more harmful and moving more toward the aspect of unwholeness, which what are we about here? We're about wholeness, right? And that's what Jesus was about. That's what these teachings are about, is one thing is needful, the wholeness. He's speaking to our oneness, staying connected to that oneness. And this is consistent with our first unity principle, that we're never separated from God, that God is one presence and one power. Any sense of lack is in our consciousness. So the next time someone tells you how busy they are, maybe we could respond from not a place of, oh yeah, you ought to see my calendar, but from a place of your wholeness, of actually being with that person. From our second principle, that there is divinity in every single human being. Something might change. Something might shift. And you might even respond with, wow, that sounds like a full day. Have fun. What if you said that to yourself? What if I'd said that, and I did eventually say it, about the Teabags? So our balance of inner and outer activity is needed to realize God as always present. There's a Taoist saying that says, to the mind that is still, the world surrenders. So we still our mind. We take a few moments of prayer, breathing to disrupt the pattern that we're in of busyness. Take a walk, take a nap. Here's another thing about the Bible that I want to bring forth is that this story is only in Luke. And why is that? The Synoptic Gospels, Matthew and Luke, were based on Mark. And then Matthew wrote from Mark, and Luke wrote from Mark. But this story, Luke wrote for a different audience. Luke wrote from the perspective of a more cosmopolitan audience, an audience as they were in the year around 88. So this was now a place that appealing to Gentiles and Jews was more important. So this story is taking place in the first century, and there were some things going on like cultural norms, traditional roles. And I just want to take this just one step forward and talk about this story is actually a stunning example of the teaching where Jesus ignored religious and societal definitions. Rebel, breaker of those traditions in favor of wholeness and humanity. Challenging that status quo of traditional roles, cultural norms of the first century. We have that opportunity now too, don't we? Of our own expectations of ourselves. I see this, people hurling expectations on top of other people. Really? So we talk about our mission. I think we skipped that slide earlier, but the mission here, as I read it on the website, was acknowledging the divinity within. We welcome and empower all through fellowship, education, and service to our community and the world, which requires, guess what? Anybody have an idea? It requires bringing our Christ nature forward. So when we're feeling that sense of separation, when we're faced with expectations outside our principle of oneness, when I'm standing in the kitchen seeing these gaps in efficiency, recognize that it's not about doing more outer things. It's about or going even back to the old ways, or even settling for things as they are. It's not about the Teabags. It's about that balance of outer and inner activity. It's about challenging some of the status quo so that we can realize and share our oneness and wholeness with others. That's the way we're going to achieve this mission. Integrating our highest self every day, no matter if the tea bags are on the other side of the kitchen. Are we living our lives in this world from our oneness with God? Are we living in balance with a spiritual understanding from both the inner and the outer work? And can we please stop using the word busy? Can we live in the understanding of what it means to be human? Can we live in favor of wholeness and humanity within ourselves and others? And let's remember, if feeling this sense, because we're not really ever separate, but if we're having this sense of separation, of lack, of anxiety, irritation, can we just stop and say, Martha, Martha, it's not about the tea bags. And so it is.